The election to the All-Russian Constituent Assembly began on November 25, 1917. When we left off, the Bolsheviks were now in charge, and in the immediate weeks after October, there was no serious military opposition. Most people expected the regime to collapse on its own. And while the Bolsheviks were asserting their control over the opposition, hope remained that things would work out with the Constituent Assembly. You know, the election promised all the way in March? It was finally happening, and the opposition would be represented there. The Bolsheviks would surely respect the assembly. After all, they had seized power, partially in the name of protecting it. Meanwhile, the everyday workers were largely unaware of the political maneuvering. They thought an all-Soviet government was supposed to be formed, and to them, it seemed like all this was just party leaders squabbling. Confused why a national coalition of the parties hadn't been formed yet, a few days after October, the Railwaymen's Union issued an ultimatum to the Bolsheviks to begin forming the coalition, and hundreds of factories, garrisons, and Soviets joined in support. Kamenev led one faction, which sought to negotiate and open up the government to the other parties as demanded. But once the Bolsheviks secured their position, there was no longer any need to negotiate, and so they dragged their feet into the election. In the meantime, Lenin also began securing his party. As the talks were breaking off, Kamenev was accused of un-Marxist activities, and him and his supporters were ordered to resign from the Central Committee. At this stage, if the SR's Mensheviks and others could rally the support of the Bolshevik moderates, they had a chance to overturn the Leninist majority. But Lenin began to bypass the Soviet executive and slowly reduced its importance. The People's Commissars, or Sovnarkom, finally declared itself the right to pass legislation without approval. Kamenev and the moderates fought against this, but it was narrowly approved, causing Kamenev to resign and be replaced by Lenin's new right-hand man. That's right, Yakov Sverdlov. Essentially, the Soviet, which the Bolsheviks based their legitimacy on, was being reduced to a rubber stamp. Also began the crackdown against other parties, beginning with the ban on the press, causing a series of resignations across the government. Yet as all this was going on, the campaigns for the election were underway. Let's look at the parties. Despite the disagreements in upper leadership, the Bolsheviks continued to gain support. For their campaigning, they sent commissars into the countryside or relied on soldiers returning home and spreading the party gospel. And then there was the opposition, which was also fighting amongst itself. The Mensheviks had divided into left, right, and center, with all these groups losing support overall. And although the left was similar to the Bolsheviks, Martov's inability to ally with his old rival Lenin meant he would go down with the Menshevik ship. On either end were also extremely niche groups, such as the sect around the Unity newspaper and the International Social Democrats. Meanwhile, the SRs also had a left, right, and center, but the chief divide was of the left SRs, who were developing into their own party. Initially, they were the SRs who were tolerant of a Bolshevik government, but they became increasingly radicalized. Although vehemently against a coalition government, Lenin was later willing to work with the left SRs as a compromise. It should also be mentioned here that while absent from the national discussions, anarchists made up a sizable part of local politics. Still the main rival to the Bolsheviks overall, the SR factions took to the peasant assemblies dotting all across Russia. There, they were well known among the agrarian population from their platform and outreach over the years. They would also benefit from villages or families, sometimes voting as a bloc, usually for the SRs. The socialist parties that adopted nationalist angles as well, like the newly independent Ukrainian SRs, quickly gained the non-Russian populations, whether because they had nationalism in mind or because it was a proxy for their parochial village concerns. Meanwhile, without the guardrails maintained by the Duma system, the conservative groups fell apart. Their members mostly folded into the Kadets, the only non-socialist party of any legs at this point. And now for the new electoral system. The provisional government had established elaborate rules and subcommittees to oversee the election, but then it caught a bad case of being arrested, throwing the system a bit into chaos. Polling stations were without supplies, and the breakdown of infrastructure made results hard to gather and report. And this is for 80 million voters, the largest electorate in history, and most of them illiterate. As a result of all this, in some districts, the election didn't finish until 3 months after the fact. In some places, they never even got around to it. The country was subdivided into 72 districts, plus 2 for the fleets, 6 for the armies, and 1 for the railroad in northeast China. Each district was then allotted a certain number of seats based on population, to be filled using the Daunt method of proportional representation, rather than a general ballot. In every district there were lists, produced by the parties, or any group for that matter, and numbered by the order in which they were submitted. With the floodgates now open, dozens of parties, interest groups, and miscellaneous collectives would be submitting a list in the various districts. The voter then had to choose a particular list and obtain a copy of it, either by mail or at the polling station, and deposit it by sealed envelope in the voting box. This means you couldn't choose individual candidates, mix or match, or make amendments to the list. You were voting for a complete group from your district. Also, for various reasons, some parties decided to come together and produce a joint list in some districts. This will mean some of the votes aren't really divisible when determining the popular vote totals later on. With this system, a valid concern is hooligans destroying copies of a rival list, or ensuring they aren't distributed. Intimidation and incidents at the polls, often carried out by the now empowered Bolshevik Red Guards, weren't uncommon. On the other hand, the village poll workers were often school teachers, priests, and well-to-do people, leading to accusations in the other direction that they were biased against Bolshevik voters. The right-wing parties had it most hopeless of all. Voting while a priest or a landowner might be an invitation for a beating in some towns. Another way to game the system was putting a really popular candidate in multiple districts. A candidate was supposed to be limited to running in only 5 places, but we know this rule was occasionally broken. But that said, many districts carried out polling without a hitch. The highly visible elections in Petrograd and Moscow, for example, went off essentially without incident. Local scuffles aside, the evidence points to the Bolsheviks not having a master plan of subverting the election. Although when the results started becoming clear, they weren't exactly happy with the election commission. And so polling officially began on November 25th. It was scheduled to last 2 weeks, but actually the first votes were cast in Kamchatka early on October 29th, the last at February's end in Kuban. Despite the emerging repressive measures, it was truly the first democratic election in Russian history, among the most progressive systems in the world really, with universal suffrage, including for women, direct proportional representation, and secret ballot. The campaign would be intense, sometimes violent, but still, tens of millions of people cast their vote with hope for the future assembly. So let's see how they did. And the winner is the SRs. In a great upset for the Bolsheviks, the SRs come out on top with some 345 seats, receiving between 16.5 to 19 million votes, or about 40% of the popular vote. Because they had only just begun the split right before the election, most provinces didn't differentiate between left and right SRs, so the exact number of each is unknown, although it's safe to say the SR vote leaned toward the right. For now, only about 39 deputies were explicitly left SR. They were followed by the Bolsheviks with 175 seats and 10.5 to 11 million votes, so about 23%. Next are the Ukrainian SRs with 81 seats and about 4.68 million votes, or 10.5%. Although you also have to consider that an additional 1.5 million votes were joint SR lists. Adding these, plus all the miscellaneous Ukrainian socialist parties, brings the total to 6.24 million, 14.1%. The other national SRs collectively received about 19 seats, meaning if you take all the SR groups combined, they control about 58% of the total seats. Muslim parties collectively, not including the socialist Muslims already mentioned, combined for at least 28 seats and 2.38 million votes. 5.4%. Next, let's go to the Mensheviks, who, not including those already mentioned, received 17 seats and 1.43 million votes. The Kadets follow with 14 seats and 2.1 million votes. That means overall the right did abysmally, with only some 3 million votes total. Cossack parties received at least 11 seats and 1 million votes. The Armenian Revolutionary Federation, aka the Dashnaks, received about 10 seats and around 420,000 votes. The Jewish National Bloc receives at least 5 seats and 550,000 votes. The other Jewish parties at least another 100,000. And finally, the People's Socialists probably received 2 seats from about 200,000 votes. That leaves another 34 or so from national groups, 13 miscellaneous, and about 55 seats left empty. Breaking down the vote some more, the Bolsheviks do well in the industrialized cities and semi-proletarian regions, and also do well in the garrisons, especially the closer one gets to the front or the cities, and thus Bolshevik agitators. They also do well in the Baltics, historically an area famous for its radical party leaders and its close proximity to the front. The SRs carry rural regions, especially their home turf, the deeply agrarian black soil region, and where the left wing of the SRs dominate the local party, they tend to take the support that the Bolsheviks would have gotten. The Mensheviks had a weak showing all over, except in Georgia, where they successfully paired Menshevikism with Georgian nationalism. Almost half the Menshevik vote comes from Transcaucasus alone. The Kadets poll in low single digits almost everywhere, except for the two big cities. And as predicted, they do horribly in the countryside. The total turnout for the election is estimated in the range of 55 to 64%. Not the best, but definitely the highest we've seen. And so concludes the Constituent Assembly election. It's perhaps one of the few windows we have into the common sentiment of the population, even if tantalizingly incomplete. By the end of the year, deputies begin to head to Petrograd, hopeful for the long task ahead of them. I sure hope the assembly goes well.